Hi, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores. As y'all can tell by the title and the thumbnail, we're here to talk about three major topics. First of all, we're going to talk about how Washington Commanders running back Brian Robinson ripped into the previous coaching staff and talked about the difference between the Rivera era and this new AP Adam Peters, Josh Harris, and Dan Quinn-led era as well. Then we're going to talk about Jahan Dotson potentially loading up a 1,000-yard receiving season. This is coming from a non-Commanders fan nor reporter, no attachment to the Commanders. We're going to dive into how that's possible, but why that may also be a little difficult. Also, lastly, we're going to talk about how the Commanders apparently have the best NFL coaching staff. Like, out of the entire NFL, that was said by rookie second-round pick defensive lineman Jahan Johnny Newton. We're going to really do a deep dive into that, into his claims and why he would feel that way from his point of view, and does it have any real validity to it. We're going to talk about all of that and more, but before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Stay tuned because I'm working on, again, the rookie film sessions. I've been watching a lot of them, getting my notes together. Now I'm about to get to the point where I'm starting to actually do the videos for them. Also, stay tuned because I'm keeping y'all updated on everything Commanders. We start OTA practices again tomorrow, but I'm not sure if media availability is there. Maybe we'll actually be allowed to have the media there Wednesday. So whenever we do any practice that they actually let us know and see what's going on in practice, I will keep y'all updated with a full breakdown of practice, and you can get the clips of what I've seen as well. So stay tuned for everything Commanders, your one-stop shop. Keep y'all updated on every little thing that's going on. Even when the Commanders have a dead period, there's no such thing as a dead period here at RicoScores because I have so many video ideas. It's only just a matter of time, not being busy, being able to sit down and actually get them out to y'all, edit them and all of that type of stuff. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so first of all, Brian Robinson ripped into the previous Commanders staff. He said, quote, like last week, maybe a couple of weeks ago, "I think it's been great. Not just for me, but for everybody to adjust to this coaching staff. They've been so good with just how they connect with us. The conversations we have and the type of conversations we have during the meetings is just building the connection that we probably just didn't do beforehand. We didn't have the coaching staff that we felt like we could build a comfortable relationship with. So we could take that relationship from the meeting room to the practice field to the game field." Great points right there. So I feel like we've got a jump start on that right now, thanks to Coach Dan Quinn. Shouts out to Dan Quinn because Brian Robinson's giving a lot of the credit to him. So how is that hire looking right now? Hindsight's 2020, of course. And then finishing up with the quote, "Just allowing us to be more of a team, and that's helping us get off to a good start," unquote. And another thing that I want to point out is that we didn't even have enough coaches last year. I mean, we could dive into what Brian Robinson said and everything, but the one thing that I really feel like a lot of people are missing from this whole situation is that we literally did not have the right amount of coaches last year. Like, for example, our offensive lines coach last year, I believe it was Travell Warden, he suffered some sort of injury. I believe it was like some type of back injury or something, whatever. But either way, with him unable to coach for an extended period of time, especially for the offensive line, Juan Castillo, our tight ends coach, and our run game coordinator had to triple up as our O-lines coach as well for the time being, all at the same time. There's no way that we could somehow find a way to have the necessary one-on-one time with every player that needs it for the development, that needs it to build the relationship, to Brian Robinson's point. There's just no way that we had enough time and attention that Juan Castillo could even spread himself out for, to be able to do everything that he needed to do, to give everybody the attention that they needed for every minute detail that they may have needed help with. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. How can one guy juggle all of the tight ends, all of the offensive line, and still be the run game coordinator as well? I don't even know how he found the time in meetings to jump from room to room and things like that. I mean, that's absolutely insane. And then, of course, being a run game coordinator, you're also involved with the running backs. So that's the tight ends, the quarterbacks, a little bit, the offensive line, and the running backs. That he was all over the place having to do all of that. And so in comparison to now, we have Bobby Johnson as the O-lines coach. That's all he does. David Rye is your tight ends coach. And then we have the Anthony Lynn as our run game coordinator, our former head coach. And remember last year, he was the one that you could argue had everything to do with that elite run game that the 49ers had last year, arguably the best run game in the entire NFL. He's coming here to do just that, but mainly only just that, to work with Cliff Kingsbury to make sure that we marry the run with the pass. But again, we had one guy last year doing all of that, doing Bobby Johnson's job, David Rye's job, and a former head coach in Anthony Lynn's job as well. That's absolutely insane. And that's just one example of coaching malpractice from the Rivera era. But to even further my point, even defensive line wise, we'll just go to another side of the ball. Right now, we have Daryl Tapp as our defensive lines coach, Sharif Floyd as your assistant defensive lines coach, and then Ryan Kerrigan is specifically the pass rush specialist. That just literally that specific. It's crazy. That's a lot of attention being paid to just the defensive line, specifically isolating those guys into exactly what they need, when they need it, all of that type of stuff. Plenty of opportunities to get as much one-on-one time as you need, as necessary to develop those relationships, to develop your skills, all of those type of things, man. I love it. You have so many opportunities to meet with coaches in whatever capacity that you need, because we at least have one coach that's available for that. And then on top of all of that, we not only have more quantity in the coaching staff this year, but more importantly, we have more quality as well, because Ryan Kerrigan is also your assistant linebackers coach a little bit, and then we also have Ken Norton Jr. as your linebackers coach, the Ken Norton Jr. So I'm sure that through an increase in quality and quantity, this coaching staff is drastically better than last year's, and everybody definitely notices it around the building. Again, Jahan Dotson said a few weeks ago that it feels like he got traded with how different this team is in pretty much every way possible. So I can see where Brian Robinson is coming from. Those poor coaches last year were already individually not as good as the individuals in this coaching staff, but they were also spread thin to make matters even worse. I mean, poor Juan Castillo. I feel like we really need to give that man a salute for what he went through last year, man. But just to go back to Brian Robinson's quote about being able to build the connections, that just further proves that Dan Quinn looks like he was the right hire. I mean, of course, I was one of those people that was hoping that we could get the young and up and coming defensive mastermind or offensive mastermind like a Ben Johnson or a Bobby Slowick. But I said it even back then when I preferred those guys, that what relationships do they have around the NFL? What coaching staff could they put together? Yeah, maybe they are schematically more impactful and have a higher ceiling than Dan Quinn does just schematically, in just as an individual, just one-on-one. But Dan Quinn could easily put together the best coaching staff out of any of those coaching candidates that we had available. And not only has that gone to actually end up being the truth, but he even exceeded my expectations for when I was saying that. And so Dan Quinn obviously looks like it's the right hire, because it's not just scheme, it's also being a people's person. It's also being able to relate to people, to motivate people. I love the fact that Dan Quinn has preached several times that you got to adjust your teaching style based on who's receiving it. You can't just treat every player the exact same way. Some guys prefer a more aggressive, more nagging, more micromanaging approach. Some people prefer to just, you let them work and you don't yell in their ear every minute and things like that. And Dan Quinn said that he's made it a mission of his since he was hired here to make sure he gets every individual person's preferred coaching style. And he's also even had meetings with all of the coaches, no matter assistant coach or coach of a certain position group, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, to make sure that all of those guys do the exact same thing. And you can already see that the fruits of their labor are already being brought up by the fact that Brian Robinson feels a huge difference. It feels like it's a complete 180 going from last year's coaching staff and whatever we had going on with Rivera and those guys and this current one. Now we got to see if it translates to wins on the field. I'm assuming that it will. But hey, man, shouts out to Dan Quinn for doing what he's doing. And Brian Robinson, even though he's the most notable person that's spoken up about it to the media, I'm pretty sure almost everybody feels the same way. Again, Jonathan Allen said towards the end of last year, and he meant it, that he was actually really considering asking for a trade because he did not want to be a part of a rebuild. And then just like a week or two ago, he said, yeah, I was serious about that. Like at one of these OTAs practices, he was like, yeah, I was actually really thinking about getting up out of here because I do not want to be a part of another rebuild. But he said that after he spoke with Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, and saw their vision, saw their passion, saw how how they planned on doing their whole coaching thing, their whole development thing, being people's people, all of that type of stuff. He changed his mind. He was like, you know, it is a rebuild, but this actually feels like the right type of rebuild. So a lot of players are definitely taking notice. Again, we just got to see if it actually ends up mattering on the field, especially as far as this first year of the rebuild, or what Dan Quinn calls it, a recalibration. Now moving on to the next topic. Now, do you think Jahan Dotson could potentially end up with 1,000 receiving yards in 2024? Is this his bounce back year going into the third year of his career? Well, you have Chris O'Brien on Twitter at 17 Game Pace, and he did 32 bold predictions for every team in the NFL. He said Anthony Richardson finishes as the quarterback one. Wow. Dalton Kincaid catches 100 balls. Jamar Chase finishes as the wide receiver one overall with 17 plus touchdowns. And this is from like a fantasy football perspective, just to let you know. That's what he means by quarterback one with Anthony Richardson, Jamar Chase, wide receiver one. George Pickens finishes in the top 12. I love that as a Georgia Bulldog. Speaking of Georgia Bulldogs, the next one, Brock Bowers is the only Raiders skill position player to finish top 20 at their position. Love that. Jonathan Brooks finishes as a top 5 running back over the last 10 games of the season. Justin Herbert rushes for 450 plus yards and finishes as a top 10 quarterback. No Chief eclipses 1,000 receiving yards for the second straight season. Interesting. That's like the first kind of negative one, but then again, that may be a good thing if they spread the ball around a lot like that. And then Mike Williams scores double-digit touchdowns. Interesting. Tua leads the league in touchdown passes. I mean, I believe he led the league in yards last year. At least at one point he did. He eventually surpassed Sam Howell. I'm not sure if he lost about it in the season, but that sounds possible. Kyron Williams finishes outside of the top 10 running backs. The Texans have 3 1,000-yard wide receivers. Wow. Drake London doubles his NFL touchdown total of 6 in 2024. Okay, I guess because of Kirk Cousins. Kendre Miller finishes as a top 24 running back. Aaron Jones finishes as a top 10 running back with double-digit touchdowns. I can see that happening with them changing teams. Brian Thomas Jr. leads all rookie in receiving touchdowns. Devin Singletary finishes as a top 15 running back. DeAndre Swift, another Georgia Bulldog, puts up 1,500 scrimmage yards. I love that. Christian Watson leads Packers wide receivers in fantasy points. Jaleel McLaughlin leads all Broncos running backs in fantasy points. The Seahawks have no top 24 wide receivers. Dang, poor Geno Smith and Sam Howell. Deebo Samuel finishes as the top 10 wide receiver. Chris Godwin scores 7 plus touchdowns. Derrick Henry leads the league in rushing touchdowns. That's interesting. Trey McBride finishes as the tight end 1 out of the entire NFL in fantasy. Crazy. Amari Cooper sets a career high in receiving yards for the second straight year. Jamison Williams has multiple 20-point fantasy games. I like that, even though he is an Alabama guy, even though he transferred to Alabama. He was originally somewhere else, but still, that was like my favorite receiver easily in that draft that he was coming out of. Then Pollard and Spears both finish as top 24 running backs. Interesting. Zeke scores 10 plus touchdowns. Wow. AJ Brown sets career high receiving yards mark. I hope not. And then I got nothing for the Patriots, to be completely honest. I thought that was hilarious. He couldn't even give you any offensive predictions for the Patriots because their offense looks that stale. But he also mentioned that Jahan Dotson has 1,000 receiving yards. And just to let you know, his rookie season 2022, he had 523 yards on only 35 receptions compared to the 518 yards he had last year on 49 receptions. Like he got 61 targets his rookie season, 83 targets the next season, and still had less yards by 5, which is actually crazy. He had 14.9 yards per reception in 2022, but 10.6 yards per reception in 2023. So you can blame it on Eric Bieniemy, you can blame it on the offensive line, Sam Howell, but at the end of the day, Jahan Dotson deserves a lot of his blame as well with a lot of that. And even like success rate, he had a 50.8% success rate in receiving in 2022, his rookie season, and the next year he had a 48.2. So you can argue that he regressed in a lot of different ways, but I'm thinking that he can bounce back. I think this is his year. I think this is his offense, especially now that we have Jaden Daniels as the quarterback, Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator. I do have a lot of faith that Jahan Dotson will be far more productive moving forward than he has been since he entered the NFL 2 years ago. And also, I've noticed that he's bulking up a little bit to be able to take hits and deal with NFL damage a little bit better. Because remember that he missed like 7 games his rookie season 2 years ago. He should have had even more yards. I remember at one point in the season before he got hurt, I think him and Stephon Diggs were leading the NFL in touchdown receptions. Then he got hurt, and then even after he came back, it took a little minute for him and Taylor Heineke to get their chemistry back together, and then he kind of started the ball out towards the end of the season. That's why I was a little weird where last year he seemed to regress. Again, I blame a lot of that on him, but also blame blame a lot of outside factors beyond him as well. But again, going back to his rookie season, he missed 7 games. He was on the way to potentially compete for like offensive rookie of the year until he got hurt. And so, but he also didn't miss a game last year, so credit to him for that. And being able to actually play and be on the field will play a huge role in whether he'll hit that 1,000 yard mark or not. But I know some people may be thinking it's going to be really hard for Jahan to get 1,000 yards when he's on the same team as Terry McLaurin, and that's understandable. Because just to give you some stats real quick that I've already given y'all in another video, but I feel like this is a good time to recap it. Terry McLaurin is the only wide receiver to hit these marks in each of the past 4 years. 75 plus receptions and 1,000 plus receiving yards. The only receiver in the entire NFL to do that. And even to go beyond that, McLaurin currently has the second longest active 1,000 yard receiving streak with 4, only behind Mike Evans, who has 10 right now, going for the Jerry Rice record, which I believe is 11, honestly. If Mike Evans reaches 1,000 yards next year, he will tie, I believe Jerry Rice has the record for consecutive 1,000-yard receiving seasons, and hopefully he doesn't get off to a great start against us week 1. Let's shut him down week 1, then after that, you can go get your 1,000 yards. But either way, I'm just bringing up these stats to show that Terry McLaurin is as consistent as it gets with getting 1,000 yards. No matter how many different quarterbacks he's had since he's been here, no matter how much he's not getting targeted in games even when he's been open, no matter how bad the offensive coordinators have been here since he's been here as well, he's always found a way to barely make it over that 1,000-yard receiving mark. He had to get it in the final game this past season, barely made it. And so, again, with those stats, I can see why some of y'all may be worried about how both Terry and Jahan could get 1,000 yards each in the same season. Well, just to let you know, 5 teams did it last year. Why can't we be one of them? You have the Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill had 1,710 yards, and Jalen Waddle had 1,356. All on the same team. The Cincinnati Bengals, Jamar Chase reached 1,046 yards and T. Higgins reached 1,029. You know, barely making it, but still possible, still did it. The Eagles, A.J. Brown had 1,496 and Devonta Smith had 1,196 as well. Then the Seattle Seahawks, D.K. Metcalf had 1,048 and Tyler Lockett had 1,033. I can see us having some similar situation like that, where Terry has 1,048 and Jahan has 1,033. I'm seeing something realistic like that. Then you also have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mike Evans had 1,124 and Chris Godwin at 1,023. This is very possible. Again, 5 other teams did it. And remember, I talked about this in another video, but there seems to be some hype behind Jahan Dotson, you know, bouncing back from the previous year that he just had. Pro Football Focus named him their breakout candidate for the Washington Commanders. They did a whole article on their breakout candidates for every team in the NFC. I'm pretty sure they did one for the AFC as well, but this article includes the entire NFC. And for the Washington Commanders, of course, Jahan Dotson. They said Dotson finally played all 17 games last year, but his production didn't jump much in 2023. A big reason was a shaky quarterback play with Sam Howell pacing the league in turnover-worthy plays. While Howell never seemed to establish good connections with either Terry McLaurin nor Jahan Dotson, Jaden Daniels should quickly change that, especially by targeting Dotson on intermediate routes, where he notched a 96.4 receiving grade in 2023. So even though overall he didn't have that great of a year, intermediate routes where Jaden Daniels loves to throw towards, since at least in college, we'll see what he is like at the NFL level, but I'm assuming that trend will continue, where Jaden Daniels likes to throw, where Jahan Dotson, even in a down year, was elite at being a receiver. That they can make magic right there. That intermediate route area right there, 96.4 receiving grade is elite. Like, was he the best at that in the NFL last year? He had to be at least top 5 at specifically that. So Jahan Dotson, even though it seemed like he had a terrible season last year, there were still flashes. There were still reasons to have hope for him moving forward. And now that you have a new quarterback, a new offensive coordinator, and all of these weapons around him, and hopefully a better offensive line around the quarterback, I think he can do it. And finishing up with the article, the 2024 season feels like the make or break one for Dotson in Washington. And with the departure of Curtis Samuel and no true tight end one, he should be utilized better by new offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. Let's get it. I like the sound of Jahan Dotson getting 1,000 yards along with Terry McLaurin, 2 1,000-yard receivers. Absolutely love that. The thought of that that. Was the last time that that's happened for us Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon? I believe so. And that may have been 2016 with Kirk Cousins. I'm not exactly sure. Don't quote me on that. That's just going purely off of memory. But moving on to the final and third topic of this video. Again, we have three major topics. We're going to finish it up with our rookie second round defensive lineman who still is dealing with the Jones fracture in his foot. He recovered from one in one foot. Now he's dealing with another one in another foot. I'm expecting him to fully recover and come out and be one of the most impactful rookies in the entire NFL immediately. I'm that high on him. But he was on Instagram Live with, I'm assuming, one of his folks, and he said this.
How that coaching staff be?
The coaching staff, what them boys asking in the chat. The coaching staff tough though. I love the coaching staff.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't even feel. I know we got the best coaching staff in the league.
You hear that? He said, quote, I know we got the best coaching staff in the league. And he said it so confidently. And I'm not going to lie. Even though the Panthers had a great coaching staff going into the 2023 season last year and ended up failing miserably, I truly believe that we do really have an elite coaching staff. It may just be on paper for now, but I'm telling y'all, with the amount of player development, proven player development that we have in this coaching staff, and how we have so many top dogs who are coming here for lesser roles so that they can focus solely on what they do best. I mean, we have several former offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators in smaller or more specific roles. We even have former head coaches in smaller roles as well. I mean, Anthony Lynn was once the head coach of the Chargers when Justin Herbert won Offensive Rookie of the Year. And then he was the run game coordinator for the best run game team in the last year in the NFL with the 49ers. And then he left that great situation to come do the same thing here, which I was surprised about, but thank goodness for him. And of course, Cliff Kingsbury was the head coach of the Cardinals and now is only focused on being our offensive coordinator, not worrying about having to deal with an entire team. I remember, I believe it was Logan Paulson, somebody brought up the fact, maybe it was like a Cardinals reporter, that like Cliff Kingsbury was just never really meant to do like a head coach type of thing. He's meant to be an offensive person, and that's it. Because that, I believe it was a Cardinals reporter that said there were even times like during training camp where like he would kind of pretend and show his face on the defensive side of the ball and act like he was monitoring everything, but at the end of the day he would just always end up back with the offensive side of the ball, especially with the quarterbacks, and watching what they're doing, micromanaging that, and make sure he's directing everything going the right way and things like that. So I mean, he's just supposed to be a guy. You're just a pure offensive coordinator. Head coach juggling the entire team is just not his thing. And with him being an offensive coordinator and a great quarterback developer, I'm expecting Jaden Daniels to work out very well for us as a second overall pick. That's literally what he's best at, scoring points and quarterback development. So I'm really excited. And then specifically to Johnny Newton's part of the team, let's say the defensive line, like I mentioned earlier, we have three good coaches dedicated to just the defensive line alone. Again, Ryan Kerrigan is just the pass rush specialist specifically. There's still a defensive lines coach and an assistant defensive lines coach even outside of Ryan Kerrigan. And then Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. are known around the NFL as one of, if not the most creative defensive minds in the entire sport. You don't lead the NFL in takeaways over the last 3 years for no reason or just by luck. That just doesn't happen. Their ability to disguise coverages and confuse quarterbacks, and also their ability to manufacture pressure outside of your traditional just 4 or 5 defensive linemen just rushing the passer like normal. Remember, Dan Quinn also led the NFL in defensive line stunts last year. The defensive linemen will not only be lined up any and everywhere to where offensive linemen can never get comfortable, because remember, Chase Young was mostly on one side 98% of the time, and Montez Sweat was on the other side 98% of the time. We never really even switched them up. Dan Quinn is going to do the exact opposite of that. And then he's also, on top of that, going to have them doing a lot of stunts and trying to disrupt offensive lines as much as possible. And then they're also going to blitz linebackers and defensive backs a lot too. That's why they went and got Frankie Louvu in free agency and Mike Sanders still in the draft. Those are elite blitzing linebackers and defensive backs right there. Offensive lines and quarterbacks will never have a chance to be comfortable in this scheme. Even though we don't have a true dog at edge rusher right now, I'm not worried about our ability to get pressure on the quarterback at all. And Johnny Newton is excited. I'm excited with him. I'm sure a lot, if not all, of the players on this team are excited. Jonathan Allen, again, even earlier, like I said, seriously considered leaving because he did not want to be a part of another rebuild. But he also said that after seeing and getting to know this coaching staff and Adam Peters and those guys and seeing what they are building here, he was sold and he was all in as far as staying a Commander. And if the players are this excited and optimistic, then y'all should be too, to be completely honest. And I understand you don't want to put your heart into it yet until you see see it on the field actually turn into wins and things like that. I mean, again, I'm not saying that we're going to win a Super Bowl this year at all. I'm not even saying that we're going to necessarily even make the playoffs this year, but I am saying that we have a lot of reasons to be excited about the near future of this team, and Johnny Newton brings up a solid point that maybe we actually do. Remember, we didn't sign the most veteran free agents in the entire NFL, and also signed them to less money than they could have gotten elsewhere, like by several players, like Frankie Louisville and Jeremy Chin, for example, easily could have gone to other teams to get more money. They came here for a reason. That's not just by happenstance. That wasn't just luck or magic. Players, coaches, and even front office people are really buying into this Commanders future right now. When was the last time the Commanders were a top free agency destination, a top coaching staff destination, a top anything destination, to be completely honest with you? And now I do want to say that since we haven't won a game yet, that we can't already say that we have the best coaching staff in the NFL, but we do have the potential to do it for sure. On paper, it's looking quite possible. If anything, I'm more worried about how we're going to be able to keep and retain all of these guys going from year to year. We have so many guys like Brandon Sosna in the front office, a lot of these guys in the coaching staff as well, that if they do as great of a job as I'm assuming that they will, they're going to want to leave to go for a promotion, like as soon as possible. So I feel like if anything, my biggest worry is not how great they'll be, it's how long can we be great, and are we building like a factory to where we can bring in a really good coach, positional coach, whatever, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and then they leave for a promotion because they did such a great job here, and then we can find the next guy that can do that same thing and keep that constant rotation of being a great team long term. It looks like we've established the foundation. Let's see if we can keep this going, and I just can't wait to see what it looks like on the field, to see the actual results of what an on paper elite coaching staff looks like. Again, I'm not going to say that we have the best yet, but we definitely have the potential to do it. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated videos just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the updates. Again, I have a lot of creative, random videos like this, working on film sessions for the rookies, keeping y'all updated with every Commanders practice that the media has any sort of availability to, any type of access to, where we get to see the practice. We know what's going on. I'm gonna keep y'all updated on all of that. Anything going on with the Commanders, any more hires, any more players getting cut, if we sign any veteran free agents, I got y'all updated on all of those. I really appreciate y'all. Make sure you do not leave this video without leaving a like, and of course let me know in the comment section how you feel about all three of these major topics that we talked about in this video today, about Brian Robinson ripping into the previous coaching staff and the difference between the last one and this current one, also the chances of Jahan Dotson reaching 1,000 yards receiving this year, especially along with Terry McLaurin at the same time. Let me know how you feel about that. And also, do you feel like, even though we cannot necessarily say that we have the best coaching staff in the NFL already because we haven't even played a game yet, but do you agree that we have the potential to be that, especially within just 1 year, to be recognized as that throughout the entire NFL, even outside of our fan base? So let me know how you feel about all of that and more. I'm trying my best to read and reply to as many comments as I can. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Appreciate y'all. I'm out.